The rain hammered against the window panes of Christine's car, each drop a tiny drumbeat adding to the frantic rhythm of her heart. Beside her, Clay fumbled with the wipers, his face a mask of concern. She clutched the simple paper envelope in her hand, the one that supposedly held her salvation. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, bone deep and absolute. It felt like years since the old woman, Mrs. Ganesh, had cursed her, binding her soul to a grim fate in the abyss. The preceding days had been a blur of escalating terror, strange, unsettling occurrences that had chipped away at her sanity. She'd felt watched constantly, that chilling sensation of unseen eyes on her back, a feeling echoed in stories of stalkers lurking just out of sight, their presence a suffocating weight even when unseen. There had been unexplained noises in the dead of night, taps at windows, footsteps in empty rooms, sounds that defied logic and preyed on her every waking moment. It was the kind of fear that wrapped around you like a physical thing, cold and suffocating. But now it was over, or so she believed. She had followed the instructions, transferring the curse to an unsuspecting soul by giving them an object she had given away. The object was this button, now sealed in the envelope. She had done it. She had passed the horrific burden onto another, breaking the chain of the curse, or so the mystic had promised. They were at the fairgrounds, the sickly sweet smell of cotton candy and fried dough doing little to cut through the damp, electric air. The plan was simple: bury the cursed envelope, severing the final tie. Clay parked the car near a small, deserted patch of ground away from the main carnival lights. The ground was muddy, churned up by the rain, reflecting the garish neon signs of the rides like warped, colorful puddles. Christine's hands trembled as she held the envelope. It felt lighter than she expected, flimsy and insignificant for something that held the power to condemn her soul. Relief, so potent it made her feel momentarily weak, flooded her. She was safe. She had survived the impossible. The thought was like a burst of pure, clean air after days spent struggling to breathe. Clay got out of the car, opening her door. "You ready?" he asked, his voice gentle, full of a kindness that had been her anchor through the nightmare. She nodded, stepping out onto the wet grass. The fair noises seemed distant here, muted by the trees and the rain. Just the soft patter on leaves, the distant, almost mournful call of a carnival barker, and the relentless drumming on the car roof. It reminded her of the sounds she'd heard outside her tent on that ill-fated camping trip, the eerie humming and cracking branches that announced an unwelcome, terrifying presence in the darkness. The woods there, like the edge of the fairgrounds here, had felt thick with unseen things, a primal, unsettling isolation that amplified fear. She walked a few paces, the mud sucking at her shoes. This felt surreal. After everything, the visions, the attacks, the constant, gnawing dread, it was ending here, in a muddy patch next to a traveling fair. She knelt, the wet ground seeping into her jeans, and began to dig with a small trowel they'd brought. The soil was cold and heavy. As she worked, she kept glancing over her shoulder, an ingrained habit from days of feeling pursued. The shadows under the trees seemed deeper, longer, and the distant lights of the fair felt less like a beacon of safety and more like a stage, drawing unwelcome attention. The feeling of being watched prickled at the back of her neck, a phantom sensation left over from the curse. Was it truly gone? Or was the entity merely waiting, patient and malevolent? She dug the hole, shallow but sufficient. It didn't need to be deep. The act was symbolic, final. She held the envelope over the muddy opening. This was it. Freedom. A chance to go back to her normal life. To sleep soundly without the fear of something standing at the foot of her bed or scratching at her window. She thought of the girl in the office, the one she had passed the curse to, and a pang of guilt, sharp and cold, pierced through her relief. But she pushed it down. It was self-preservation. It was survival. "Christine? What's that?" Clay's voice startled her. He was standing by the car, a confused look on his face. In his hand, he held another envelope. An identical envelope. It was the one she had asked him to hold for her earlier, containing his grandmother's quarter, a small token of good luck. Her blood ran cold. The ground seemed to tilt. He walked towards her, holding it out. "You gave me this one," he said, indicating the envelope in his hand. "I thought you wanted me to hold the button envelope." Her eyes widened, darting from the envelope in her hand to the one in his. They were identical. The sudden downpour earlier, her trembling hands, the desperate haste to be rid of the curse, she had mixed them up. The envelope she had just buried, the one meant to contain the cursed object, contained nothing but a quarter. The cursed button was still here. It was in Clay's hand. The air grew heavy, colder than the rain justified. The distant fair noises seemed to die away completely, replaced by a low, guttural sound that wasn't thunder. It was the sound of something vast, ancient, and utterly terrifying, waking from its slumber, aware that its prey had attempted escape, only to fail at the final hurdle. Clay looked from the envelope to Christine's face, seeing the dawning horror there. What's wrong?" he asked, his voice faltering. Christine couldn't speak. Her breath hitched in her throat. The feeling of being watched intensified, not just a prickling sensation now, but a crushing weight, as if the very air around her had become thick with malevolent presence. A deep, resonant growl seemed to vibrate through the muddy ground beneath her feet. It wasn't the sound of a wild animal. It was the sound of something truly demonic, something that had been promised her soul, and now, due to her fatal error, was coming to collect. Clay looked down at the envelope in his hand, then back at Christine, his confusion turning to fear as he finally understood. He didn't need to open it. The weight of the curse, the pure, concentrated evil it contained, was palpable. The rain seemed to turn to ice, stinging her skin. The ground split open beneath her feet, not a gradual fissure, but a violent, sudden tear, revealing not just mud and earth, but a terrifying, fiery glow from the depths below. A deafening roar erupted from the ground, raw and full of triumphant malice. Tentacles of shadow and flame reached out, wrapping around Christine's legs. She screamed, a sound ripped from the deepest part of her soul, a sound that was instantly swallowed by the roar of the pit. Clay stumbled back, dropping the envelope, his face frozen in a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. The last thing Christine saw before being dragged down into the inferno was Clay's terrified eyes, illuminated by the hellish light, holding the envelope with the cursed button. Her mistake, a simple, tragic mix-up in the rain, had sealed her fate. The eternal curse remained. I am legend, a missed opportunity for survival. The air in the lab was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid stench of the infected. Outside, the night was a symphony of guttural snarls, ragged breaths, and the relentless thudding of bodies slamming against the reinforced glass. Robert Neville moved with a grim purpose, his mind a whirlwind of scientific data, desperate hope, and the crushing weight of his solitude. For years, he had been the last man, a solitary figure in a world overrun by creatures born of a virus gone wrong, the Darkseekers. He had seen the bare feet in the snow, the unervingly human-like silhouettes lurking at the edge of vision, the blank, staring eyes of things that were once people but were now something else entirely. They were a terrifying blend of the familiar and the monstrous, their pale, gaunt bodies moving with unnatural speed and strength, driven by a predatory hunger. Like the twisted figures in the woods or the hunched creatures on the beach, they represented a fundamental violation of what should be, a horror not from the supernatural, but from the corruption of the natural world itself. He had found Anna and Ethan, unexpected survivors, symbols of a potential future. And he had found the key, the antidote, the single drop of hope in an ocean of despair. But the Darkseekers knew. They had tracked them here, to his sanctuary, his last stand. The alpha male, intelligent and driven, was leading the assault, his roars echoing with a terrifying, almost human rage. He gripped the vial of antidote, its precious liquid glowing faintly in the emergency lights. Anna and Ethan stood beside the heavy steel door of the reinforced shed, their faces etched with fear. The shed, built like a bunker, was a testament to Neville's foresight, a place of absolute safety just steps away from the chaos. It could withstand anything the Darkseekers could throw at it. It was their only chance. "Anna," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He pressed the vial into her palm. "Take this. Protect him." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. The thudding intensified, the glass beginning to groan under the strain. It wouldn't hold much longer. He ushered them into the shed. The space was small, but solid, built for survival. There was room for them both, ample room. He watched as they squeezed through the narrow opening, Anna pulling Ethan behind her. They were safe. Just 2 more steps, 2 quick strides, and he could join them. The shed door stood open, an invitation to safety, to life. But his gaze was fixed on the glass, on the monstrous shapes writhing just beyond it. They were breaking through. The alpha male was already halfway through the shattered pane, his eyes burning with malevolent intent. Neville's hand went to his belt. The grenade. His final option. A desperate measure to buy time, to ensure the antidote escaped, to perhaps take down the alpha and give humanity a fighting chance, even if he wouldn't be there to see it. He pulled the pin. The small metal cylinder felt heavy in his hand, a tiny engine of destruction. The shed door was still open, a rectangle of darkness waiting for him. 2 steps. Just 2 steps. He could lob the grenade, a simple underhand toss towards the breach, and then dive into the shed, slamming the door shut behind him. It was logical, the obvious course of action. The shed could easily accommodate one more. It was mere feet away. It would take moments. But the image of the alpha, the sheer force of the attack, seemed to override logic, to demand a sacrifice. A final stand, rooted in the guilt of being the last one left, perhaps, or a scientist's dedication to his creation, even unto death. The thought of joining Anna and Ethan, of sharing that small, safe space, seemed secondary to the immediate, overwhelming need to destroy the threat. He raised the grenade, not to throw it, but to hold it. He turned his back on the open shed door, on the possibility of survival, and faced the oncoming horde. The alpha roared, its pale, contorted face inches from his. The other Darkseekers poured in through the widening breach, their movements jerky and unnatural, a terrifying wave of distorted humanity. He stood his ground, the grenade held tight against his chest. The shed door was right behind him, a silent witness to the choice he was making, a choice that negated the simple, life-preserving alternative. He closed his eyes. The roar of the Darkseekers filled his ears, a symphony of predatory triumph. The glass shattered completely. Bodies slammed into him. And then, the world erupted in a blinding flash of light and a deafening concussive blast. Inside the reinforced shed, Anna and Ethan were safe. They were alive. The antidote was with them. But Robert Neville, the last man, the one who had found the cure and the means of escape, was gone. He had chosen sacrifice over a mere 2 steps, a choice that bought time, yes, but at the cost of a life that could have continued. The shed was just 2 steps away. It was a missed opportunity for survival, sealed by a single, irreversible decision.